This is the reason that the whole episode of Sodom and Gomorrah comes up in this parsha, because Avraham Avinu, he begins the Torah parsha with these acts of selfless kindness to these strangers, and his acts of kindness are in complete contradistinction to what's going on down in Sodom and Gomorrah. And they were judged. They weren't, people, in today's vernacular, we always think about Sodom and Gomorrah. Someone says, I've been there. If you've been to Vegas, that's a regular Sodom and Gomorrah. And they're actually talking more about the sexual nature of the sins of Sodom. But this never comes up in the idea that these angels were sent to destroy these 5 cities of the plain. It's because they had completely rejected kindness.
I'm so glad that you're saying that, because that is such a... I was just talking about this today with the situation. The thing is that in Sodom, they had laws. You're fond of talking about the code of, what's his name again?
Hammurabi.
Right. How people talk about, the code of Hammurabi, that was like the first civilized society, like laws. There were horrible laws, though. They were horrible, cruel laws. So the thing about Sodom, like you said, in addition to the sexual depravity, which is a recurring theme, as we keep finding throughout Genesis, that mankind has a proclivity towards sliding down that slope. But in Sodom, they had laws. It was a society that was based on their take on justice. So, for example, the sages, again, in their incredible midrash, it's always so piercing and so jarring. The examples that they give. So there's a concept about Sodom. It's called the bed of Sodom. Yes. So they had hospitality there, right? Had a bed and breakfast, Airbnb, right? But they had only one size of this bed. And the Midrash says that a guest would come, and this is the bed. And either it fits him, or his legs are too long. If his legs are too long, they chopped off his legs. And if he didn't meet between the headboard and the footboard, they stretched him, right? So that is like what Sodom was. But they had all sorts of rules. Like, for example, there's another incredible insight of our sages that talks about why is it that when it came time for Lot's wife to be punished, that she was turned into a pillar of salt. Yeah. Why salt, right? And so there's a statement that when the angels came to Lot, the guests came, right? He wanted to offer them salt with their meal. And she said, oh, you also brought that miserable, wretched custom here to offer guests salt with their meal, right? So because of that, because she was like, what is the word in English? Like miserly in not wanting to give salt, she turned into a pillar of salt. So like everything was like a huge, what do you call it? Like a inversion of everything good, of propriety, of dignity, of caring about another person. It was like a mockery, like a parody, like a netherworld, like a dystopian vision, an inverted vision of what everything should be. That was their everyday norm in Sodom.
Mm-hmm. They'd outlawed charity.
Yes, exactly.
You could not, if a stranger came that was not part of the community, if a stranger came to town, it was forbidden to give them lodging or to feed them. And there's a source called Sefer HaYashar, which I'm fond of quoting because it's mentioned twice in the Tanakh, in 2 Samuel 1:18 and Joshua 10:13. It says, "Have you not read this in Sefer HaYashar?" There is an account in there that what really sealed the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah was when a traveler came to town, no one would feed him, no one would give him lodging, and the youngest daughter of Lot would sneak out in the nighttime and feed this poor soul. And, she was caught, and they tortured her to death. This is how
for wanting to take care of a guest, right?
To show kindness, she was put to death, and that's when The narrative in Sefer Yashar says that the angels sort of cried out to Hashem and said, "Look at this. They have," and so this sealed their fate. Was this? And I was trying to find the reference to the nations, but like you said, I mean, maybe I'm putting too fine a point on it. That the fact that courts of justice, the other side or additional aspect of that, as you just pointed out, is to practice kindness,
Right.
to make it
Again,
a daily thing.
if we believe that that's the foundation of creation, that's what makes the world go round. That should be the purpose of seeing to it that justice is administered. But the again, like the negative image of that is when you have a society that's very organized and very structured and has all these laws, but it's all basically geared towards exploitation of other people, right?
Yeah.
Where we're going with this, because it's like
Sure.
there's so much of this that sounds like like an exaggeration, like some sort of horrible, fantastical, fictional depiction of dystopian society. And such things have been written already, we know. But the fact is that there's a lot of aspects of our society, Western society today, that seems to be going in this direction.
Yeah, I was going to, the Ramban, with an N, Ramban writes that tzedakah, charity, kindness, exalts any individual or a nation that practices it. And he also writes later on and says the story of Sodom that appears in Breshit, in his commentary, he points out that the root cause of the destruction of the cities was described by the prophet Ezekiel, who says, quote, in verse 16, 49 and 50, "Behold, this was the sin of Sodom, your sister. She and her daughters had pride and a surfeit of bread and peaceful serenity. But she did not strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy, and they were haughty, and they committed an abomination before me. So I removed them in accordance with what I saw." And so there again strengthens the idea that and also, by the way, just by virtue of the fact that these they were held accountable to these laws because the Torah had not yet been given. And so they were the reason that they didn't have an excuse is because they must have known about the Noahide laws, and the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah obviously were what you would call Noahide towns, because any town would have been before the giving of the Torah. So their fate was sealed and the execution was carried out. And again, the kindness, as we're talking about, of the patriarch, is he pled, even knowing that, and knowing their wickedness, Abraham pleads for them to be spared.